there isn't a lot of support for people when they lose what is often an extraordinarily important relationship for them. And there are a number of themes that come up at every one of these meetings. And what we wanted to do was to take the experience that people gain through the group and just make it available to a much broader audience. And so that's what we have in the book. We have the kinds of themes that come up over and over and over again. And they are things like, is my grief normal? Is what I'm going through okay, or do I need additional help? Is it okay that this grief is worse, more difficult than any other loss that I've ever had? We hear that a lot.
And I was going to ask you about that because you shared that with us, or with me, when we were talking earlier. Why is that? Why is it that the loss of a pet, in some cases, is more traumatic than the loss of a human loved one?
Well, when we have a pet, they are part of our lives every day in a very, very special kind of intimacy. They are often very physically close to us. They follow us around. We touch them with our hands every day. We are having a very uncomplicated relationship with them. We don't get into arguments. They don't betray us. And we oftentimes, when it comes to the end of their life, we're even engaged in a more intimate fashion. So many times as pets age, we have to do things like prepare special foods for them, maybe even manipulate their body in ways that are therapeutic for them. We have a number of people come to our meetings who have to do things like put water under the skin of their animal, their cat or dog, because they're going through kidney problems. And when you have that kind of care, there's nothing that comes close to that except maybe when we're caring for an infant, when you're just having to take care of all of these simple bodily needs. And so when we lose that, it's a big part of our everyday experience. So that relationship is extraordinarily important in many people's lives. And you're right, we'll hear people say, when my mother died, or when my father died, it was nothing like this. Well, oftentimes those people aren't part of your household. They're not there every day. They're important. They're very important in your heart, but they're not a part of your everyday routine. So that seems to mark the difference.
And the sadness that comes with that, because I can think of several people who've lost cats and dogs, and it is traumatic. It is traumatic.
Absolutely.
And the longer the pet has been with them, the more traumatic it is.
Yep. And that decision to euthanize, too, is so particular to this relationship. And many people, when somebody who's special to us, whether it's a human being or an animal companion, when they die, we often experience guilt. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. What did I miss? What did I not do that maybe I should have done? When we have to make the decision to end their lives, the guilt is often even more pronounced.
Right.
And the thing that's so hard to see is that these are people who experience that level of guilt are almost always the people who have gone so far above and beyond. But there's something about making the decision that is just painful beyond all else that many people will struggle with. And so we talk about that a lot. And also we'll talk about how the decision to euthanize, to end your pet's suffering, is different from killing them. You're ending the suffering. Age, a debilitating illness, a terrible injury, those are the causes of death. You're helping them die in a way that is less painful. And it's really an act of love. And so that's some of the kinds of conversations that we have.
Now, are people coming to the group because they've heard about it, they recognize that their grief is so great that they need help? How do they find you, and what are the reasons that they're coming?
They find us most usually either through word of mouth or through St. Hubert's website, where the group is posted. they come from all over, too, because there are very few of these kinds of meetings. And sometimes they're referred by therapists as well. But they come because they're really struggling. They're really struggling. And oftentimes they come because they're not getting support anywhere else. And our society has such a difficult time addressing grief of any sort. So I read research a few years ago that stays with me, and that research found that most people, when they know that somebody close to them has lost any important relationship, whether it's a human family member or a relationship, let's say, the ending of a marriage through divorce, they expect that that person will be back to normal in 3 weeks. And that's not the way it works. It takes a lot longer than that for most people. And so right from the beginning, people are feeling like, I don't have the support I need. Maybe there's something wrong with the fact that this matters so much to me. So the need is strong. The need is strong. And there are people who, in fact, come because they don't know how to talk to their children about this, that they're not sure whether they should include their child as they, let's say, move towards the knowledge that their pet is going to die soon. What do we do with that? They want to talk about how do I manage this?
Having the conversation.
How do I have this conversation? What do I do afterwards? Because when we lose a human companion, oftentimes there's a ready-made ritual or process for gathering support, whatever you're going to do with the body. It's prescribed, perhaps by your community of faith. And there's a sense of how I move forward. When we lose a pet, when they're this special to us, none of that's there. We have to kind of make it up. And so that also leaves people often at a loss. And it helps to meet with other people who are going through a similar loss, talk it through, see what you can learn, and also just be validated in the experience that, in the knowledge that this is important.
And you cited earlier that the expectation is when you lose someone close to you that you kind of bounce back in 3 weeks. So how does that work with a pet? And what have you seen? What is their recommendations? In other words, do you go out and get a different pet, the same pet? How soon? How does that work?
It's a great question, and there's so much about grief that's individualized. We know what to expect when it comes to broad strokes. We know that people might very well have a whole range of feelings. And we know that other patterns of daily living are disrupted. Sometimes our sleep is disrupted, or our appetite for food is disrupted. And our ability to concentrate isn't what it might have been before the loss. Those kinds of questions, when do I get another pet? How do I make that decision? Very much have to do with your own temperament, what feels right for you. So some people, they need to go right out, and they need to get another puppy or kitten or horse or guinea pig or what have you, because they need to fill that void in their family. Now, when people feel that way, we'll talk about how that's a new relationship. That's not going to replace the one
that you just lost.
You lost. And so it might give you a wonderful, healthy distraction, welcoming this new member of the family, but you don't want to expect them to fill the void, because they're not going to do that. So, for example, if you bring a puppy into the house, puppies are a lot of work, and you got to be ready for that. So some people will need to bring a new pet into their families right away. Other people, they know that they're not ready. They know that they're not ready. And so the message that we give is, let time be your friend. If you're not sure, then don't rush ahead. There's lots of time for that. And some people just feel like, I have to be near animals. And so we'll say to them, maybe you should volunteer. Maybe you should come to St. Hubert's or another animal shelter and visit the animals who are there for the time being. And maybe you should even foster a pet. But you don't have to make the decision to adopt right now.
Now, I think of, I'm a boomer. I think you're a boomer. And we're going to have more baby boomers who are, reaching older age. Is it recommended that as we go through, divorce or loss of a spouse or a loved one, companion, that perhaps having a pet is healthy? Because I've done some research on this, and the whole fact that you have a pet, someone to love you unconditionally, which is probably why the loss of the pet is so traumatic, because humans usually have some conditions of love. But a pet is unconditional. Are you finding that, or is it recommended that as people begin to age and maybe live alone or their family is distant, that maybe having a pet is something that helps them?
Well, you're talking to a guy with a lot of bias here.
Okay.
Because I think pets are wonderful. I think it's a wonderful aspect of life to have animals who are close to you. And you're right, there's research that shows things like when you pet a dog, your blood pressure reduces.
Right.
And that owning pets in general reduces a person's experience of stress. And so there's research that supports the health factor and the fact that it's generally good for people. But again, some people would say, well, as we age, it might be more of a challenge to take care of an animal. It might be, we might be having difficulties with our own self-care. And there are people for whom it just doesn't fit their sensibilities to have an animal in their lives. I think it's a good idea. I encourage people to think about it, because there's nothing like having companionship.
Right.
That's a healing part of many people's lives. But again, it depends. But certainly, if you're interested in having a pet, and you've had pets your whole life, I think it's a very valuable thing to explore. At any stage of the life cycle.
Yeah, I know that with veterans, for instance, and those with post-traumatic,
post-traumatic stress disorder,
right? That having a pet and having that interaction helps to reduce their stress level, their level of depression, and that kind of thing. So the health benefits certainly are significant.
Pets teach us to be in the moment. Animals live in the here and now. And so many times human beings are way off into the future or in some way preoccupied with the past. But when you spend time with an animal and you get in sync with their perspective, that brings you to a kind of mindfulness that can be quieting and can help you just experience the moment in a way that is different than when we do when we're left to our own devices, to our own frenetic devices.
I think what you've said is significant and profound, because living in the moment is not what humans do, particularly with all of their devices. So you have the iPad, the smartphone, the cell phone, you name it. You're carrying a lot of devices that are taking you to the future and taking you and distracting you in many ways. And the having the pet that makes you in the here and now and nothing else is a huge, huge benefit.
And I have a number of different kinds of animals. And chickens, for example. Chickens are in the here and now. They're doing what they're doing. They're interesting. They're rabbits, dogs, cats. They teach us a different way to be. See, I'm biased.
But it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. I'm Karen Delk, and this is New Beginnings. Thank you for joining us.